to cover a number of topics ranging from the Fed to the threat of ISIS, I was joined earlier by former U.S. Congressman Dr. Ron Paul. And I first asked him if his son, U.S. Senator Rand Paul, is running for president. Here's what he had to say.
I don't know.
No, you don't want to break news today? You can do it right here on Boom Bust if you feel like it. It's totally your call.
You have to ask him.
Oh, okay. Well, in that vein, you know, if you had to advise your son on what to expect in a presidential campaign, theoretically, what would be among the most important, the very most important items on your list in terms of advice?
Well, I think I'm past that stage. You know, I had a few years way back where I could influence my children. And after that, I've taught them to be very independent-minded, so I'm not in the business of telling any of my kids what they should believe or do and give them advice.
Well, we do know that parents are very powerful in influencing their children, at least my father was in my life, so maybe we can expect some of that. Now, let's move on. Dr. Paul, let's talk now the economics of foreign policy for a bit here. Last time we spoke, you said the U.S. should not be involved in trying to determine what's best for other people. So do you think the money the U.S. spends doing exactly that now would be better used to shore up finances here at home?
Well, yes, I think all money spent overseas is harmful because it's usually a negative result from spending it, not only because it costs us something and it takes it out of the productive economy and impoverishes our people. War and wartime expenditures help a small number of people, but not the people per se because it's so wasteful. You take, for instance, the military-industrial complex likes to build weapons, and then some people say, hey, we have to send them over to Syria so we can overthrow Assad. And then those weapons end up in Iraq. And then we say, oh, they're in trouble now. We better help out the Iraqis again. We got to go after these radicals. So what is the first thing we do? We go over there and blow up the weapons. No, that doesn't make any sense. That's all a drain on us, and it comes back to haunt us. That's why we're not welcomed around the world so much, especially in the Middle East, and that's why there's a growing number of people who have been radicalized who would like to kill Americans because we're so involved. But economically, it's always a cost. War is very, very costly. It's usually financed by inflation, that is printing money, which we're doing, and then the devaluation of the currency, which impoverishes the poor people. So there's a moral argument, there's an argument for peace, and there's an economic argument why we shouldn't be there, and it makes no sense whatsoever. The founders of this country said, stay out of it. Stay out of the entangling alliances and be friends with nations, trade with nations, but don't get involved in picking sides in civil wars especially.
Should the president take on ISIS in Iraq? I mean, does ISIS represent a clear and present danger to America?
No, absolutely not. That's a foolish thing. It was foolish when we got involved in 1990, 91. It was foolish in 2003 when we expanded and invaded it, and the bombing in between, killing hundreds of thousands of Iraqi. It's time to quit and time to say that it's not working. I mean, the weapons that we've sent over there and so-called we're going to help the Free Syrian Army, you know, like McCain wants to do. It's the Free Syrian Army that ended up, turning over their weapons or losing their weapons to ISIS. At the same time, those moderates over there have been helpful to ISIS, and actually it's pretty well recorded now that for $50,000 they turned over one of those journalists to ISIS. I would say it's a bad deal. It's bad for our national sovereignty. It doesn't make us safer. It makes things more dangerous. It's very costly. It sets the stage for an undermining of our civil liberties at home. So I can't think of one good reason to have been over there creating chaos and then switching our authority to the point where, you know, the Bush doctrine is, you know what, if there's a threat out there, we have to, make a declaration of war even though they haven't done anything. You know, it's this whole idea that we have a right to start a war because of a potential danger that might come later on. I say come home, and you would get rid of most of those dangers.
Dr. Paul, leaders of more than 30 countries are in Paris meeting to discuss a global response to counter ISIS. Now, two countries missing from the talks, that's Syria and Iran. So do you think Western governments will have to work with Syria and Iran if they want to defeat the terrorist group?
Well, it's actually crazy, you know, what we're doing. We're over there. We're going to fight ISIS, and ISIS is detested by Syria and Iran. So we don't want to even talk to them. They hate each other. If we walked out of there, maybe ISIS would be disappeared rather quickly. I mean, they're talking about 10 or 20,000, and they have millions of people, Muslims, but they won't dare get involved because I don't think they're going to get the troops. I don't think they're going to get the support. It's going to be all fall on us because they're going to say, well, yeah, we armed the Iraqi army, but the first attack by the radicals, they dropped all their weapons and ran. So they're going to defend this? So I would think that if you don't like ISIS, just walk away and Syria and Iran will take care of them and they'll get rid of all the radicals. Just as Saddam Hussein did. There was no al-Qaeda in Iraq and there's no al-Qaeda in Iran. So we shouldn't be so hypocritical that if we detest the radicals that do want to do harm, then just back away and somebody will take care of them. If they won't take care of them, us getting over there isn't going to help. We'd end up with another 10 or 15 years of saying, well, we have to contain and defeat the radicals, and it's just so foolhardy. I cannot believe that we persist on the same policy, which is now, as far as I'm concerned, 24 years old. Pretty soon we're going to have a 30-year war against the Middle East with no benefits coming of it.
Dr. Paul, Scotland will decide this week on whether to break away from the UK and become an independent nation. And recent polls have shown that the Yes campaign, which is in favor of breaking away, it's gaining substantial ground, and it's leaving the pro and anti-independence camps in a virtual tie here. So with the UK as one of our closest allies to the US, what are the key issues here?
Well, one is self-determination, and everybody says, oh, we're for self-determination. We went into World War I, and that was Woodrow Wilson's idea, right of self-determination. Okay, so morally we're on the right side of that. And I think it's a great thing. We should have self-determination. I happen to believe in smaller units of government. The larger the unit of government, the worse things are. The more likely it is that you're going to have authoritarianism and special interest government. So I think people should have the right to leave a larger unit of government. I think this is a great move, and Scotland, I hope they are able to pull it off.
That was former U.S. Congressman Dr. Ron Paul.